And I'd like to get started here. What we are showing you is an introduction to cloud services, Office 365, and where i3 can assist your business in getting to that next step, whether you're either interested in a particular cloud platform or service or just want to know a little bit more information. Consider this webinar an introduction to those questions. So just a few brief conference notes here before we get started. We are recording this for posterity and for future questions future relays to other interested clients. So we are recording it, but the voice will be turned off for everybody. I request please that you submit any questions or comments you may have to using the questions or chat windows. We're monitoring that too over the course of this webcast. The estimated time on this, it should be less than an hour. We'll go probably half that time and then reserve questions reserve time at the end for questions. And if anybody has any continuing thoughts after this, please feel free to contact i3 at cloud@i3bus.com. So first of all, a brief agenda here. We're just going to go through the introductions to your presenters, and then what is the cloud? What are the conditions where the cloud may be right as well as wrong for your business? Potential gotchas as well as reasons why you may want to seriously consider cloud services. Specifically, we are focused on the SMB market. That means businesses probably up to 200 seats or so. That's the focus of this particular presentation, meaning if we go higher than that, then there's different solutions and a few of the factors that we're investigating actually change for your business. So consider that too. The scope of this presentation is the SMB market. And then we'll summarize a few things and then bring it back to Q&A at the end. So the person talking right now is the first person you see on that slide, and this is Andy Kaiser. I've been with i3 for a while and am the service manager here. I also co-lead the Cloud Services program with Tom Hansma. I'm one of the technical leads on it and can speak to certain technical questions. Tom is also been with i3 for a very long time, and to continue his introduction here, I'm going to actually pass the phone right over to Tom, and he could proceed with the next steps in this webinar. Thanks, Tom. Here you go.
All right. Thank you, Andy. And thanks for all coming today. i3's been providing total information technology solutions for over 20 years. It's given us a pretty unique perspective on information technology and the impact of the cloud on our customers, whether that's enterprise level, medium, or small and medium-sized businesses. And over the past 2 to 3 years, we've worked with dozens, perhaps hundreds of our customers to figure out what is the best fit for the cloud in their unique environments. So first definition, if we could, next screen. Technically speaking, the cloud is a remote information technology resource. It has a design that's decentralized, redundant, secure, scalable, and metered. What that boils down to is it's based on the best of the Internet technologies, the Internet and World Wide Web model, so global resources. And from our perspective, in terms of using the cloud, nice little package term, but it just works. You don't need to really day-to-day manage a lot of the cloud resources like you would on-premise servers and network and related services down to desktops, laptops, and mobiles. So what does that really translate to? The cloud is computing and software resources that are delivered on demand as a service. So all the things that you're currently running in your business, the mission-critical applications, all those servers and email and storage, hard drives, your archives and phone systems, all that stuff can now be accessed as a service on demand in the cloud. Most people are pretty familiar with their iPhones and the different applications that we use all the time, every day, from our mobile devices. And actually, all the services you see on the screen have a huge cloud infrastructure in the back end. They all leverage cloud services to effectively supply this information and get it to wherever it needs to be at any time, wherever you are in the world. And now that same approach can be applied to many business-type applications and business services and delivered on a commercial grade. So why the cloud may be right for you is some huge benefits are access from anywhere, lower upfront costs, and overall cost savings are very typical in that you don't have a lot of the traditional IT upfront costs, and it's much simpler and easier and faster to deploy mission-critical applications using cloud services. So that means that you can incorporate all the bring-your-own-device type things, those iPhones that we bring from home and access business applications and critical services. So it's wireless and mobile. The costs are spread out over thousands, sometimes millions of users. So again, as a business, you benefit from that cost sharing. And what it comes down to, it helps accelerate new business initiatives. You can now sign up and implement services in a matter of hours and days instead of months and years, as is typical for traditional IT. Why the cloud may be right for you? 3 essential points. If you're just looking to save money here and there, making some incremental cost savings, you're probably missing the true benefit of the cloud. And the true value of the cloud is its ability to make business functions accessible in ways that can maximize growth and value and allow your business to move in new, innovative directions. And typically, you can't get there from here, from the old traditional IT perspective. You need to use and leverage the cloud technologies that are more agile and scalable, and see the value in that respect. So with that said, my brief introduction is over. I'm going to hand it back to Andy and take it away.
Thanks, Tom. So we have our solution here specifically for small to medium-sized business market. When we designed this, that is the group that we polled. We said, all right, based on our existing client base, our clients' needs, both from our perception of their needs and talking specifically to our clients, we've said, we try to break down our solution into several modules, right, so that we can slap a module onto any given situation. There's always exceptions, but we want to ensure that our solution will cover the SMB market. Meaning, what does that mean here? We'll get to those specific modules in just a minute. But the end goal here is to make what we're trying to do, simpler, easier, better, and more scalable. So that's our intent, and our perspective on all of this is our solution may not be the best for you. We can always tune it to better adapt to your needs. That's part of the challenges of IT. And in addition, we offer cloud consulting, meaning we're not going to magically, or intentionally push you to the cloud if that's not the right solution for your business. So part of what we're discussing here is the evaluation process and making sure that, if we are talking cloud, it's going to fit your business properly. So the modules that I spoke about, what are the pieces of a business that are, if we need to break it into functional, separate your business into functional needs. That's where we came up with this list of 5 pieces here. Okay, so let's talk about those individually. First, we have the file sync component, where we're talking about whether or not a server is necessarily involved. We're talking about files on your system. They could be, this could certainly be a server share, like a commonly shared S drive or a shared drive, or even a personal drive, or a limited access drive. But the point is you have files somewhere that many people need to access. Whether or not it's on your server is a different story. The next piece is communications. So we have email, of course, but that falls into more pieces as well as we get into a more intra-connected world with chat applications and location awareness applications, availability awareness, and we want all those pieces to talk together comfortably. So this communications is a big picture. Yeah, it's email, but it's more than email. Servers. So I brought up the first file sync comparison where we have the shared files in your environment. This servers piece says, all right, well, we are talking about cloud services and we need a server for whatever reason, but we want to investigate the cloud capabilities or the cloud possibilities for a server solution. Next, we have phones. This could include an existing system integrating with a voice over IP backend, but we want to ensure that our phone solution also encompasses the requirements of our cloud offering, meaning it should be simple, it should be scalable, it should be non-location based, right? So if you have a phone system in your office and, traditionally you should be able to go to an office and say, yes, my wall right here with the big backboard and all the stuff that's screwed onto this backboard, that's my critical core infrastructure. And if that goes down, my business goes down, or my phones go out, or there's a light blinking here indicating something is wrong, and this physical location is a requirement for the rest of my business to work. The decentralization that cloud solutions provide is an advantage so that we do not have to depend solely on one location for a point of failure. In addition, you also have say you have 3 locations, for example. There does not need to be a central location so that they can be redundant locations, or say you're a single location but you have a lot of people on the road. You can still have people on the road treat wherever they happen to be as a node in your office, so that again you're not dependent on a headquarters or a functional headquarters. Your branch office people, your additional locations, your people on the road will treat access the same way to your data, no matter where they happen to be, in your office or out. And finally, this leads into the infrastructure conversation. So I just described the decentralization concept with the understanding that, depending on what you're trying to get, depending on your functional needs, there can be pieces of the organization that are offset to the cloud. There may be some that are going to say, all right, we're going to leave this as an internally supported resource. We're not going to move it to the cloud. But with the understanding that everything that we're discussing here is intended, or at least is capable of moving to a cloud solution, with the understanding that if you do so, there may be additional needs demanded by that solution. So for example, we're talking about the backbone and routing. If you say to your office that, all right, this entire office is going to be available as a cloud solution, the data that we are synchronizing with is going to be located off-site, protected by Microsoft or IBM or Google, what are we going to do about communicating with that new headquarters, that repository online? And if your users are physically located inside of an office, we may want to put in additional checks to ensure that we have redundancy wherever your data happens to be in your back office. Specifically, that could be a redundant ISP connection. Or we have other clients that say, you know what, our main office is critical, but it's not that critical. We can always send people home, or there are a lot of people on the road. So they may say that the connectivity from their central office is not as critical as it may otherwise be. I'm giving a few examples here, and it may or may not apply to you, but these are the conversations that we have in terms of the actual consulting services when we're talking about these 5 modules. So when we discuss this, we have there's always a list of core concerns that pop up, and they're certainly justified. From a security perspective, how secure is my data? What's happening to it if it's leaving my building? And the short answer is the data that leaves your building must be incredibly secured, because we are in an environment now where the big players in this market are extremely competitive, and they cannot make a mistake. So that, part of it is to protect themselves from their own liability and also give you a guarantee of protection. And I can give you the technical stats on that in terms of like the encryption types and how the data is transported. But the short story is, if you have a regulatory compliance need, HIPAA, for example, or Sarbanes-Oxley, we can give you the guarantee, from the provider, from the cloud service, that they say, yes, we comply with these security needs. Next, data ownership. If you're putting your data elsewhere, who owns that data? The short story is you own that data, but there are additional checks that we can put in place in terms of how your data is stored and redundancy of data, because even if we say, for example, your data is housed in Microsoft, we do have some customers that say, for whatever reason, I still don't trust that, right? That entity that is outside an organization, and I want a copy of my data that I can do whatever I want with it from a access point of view. Perhaps you trust Microsoft, but it's that additional level of checks. We can add that level of redundancy for you to ensure that whether it's a regulatory thing or just simple, straight up, I want to be able to access my data in a way that is not provided by default, not a problem. We can do that. Pricing is sometimes a concern. That's where Tom described earlier. What are we looking at in order to drive a cloud solution, or in order to drive your next iteration of your IT infrastructure? Where does the pricing fall into play? Short story is that we can sometimes show a actual cost savings depending on what we're trying to accomplish with a cloud rollout. If we're consolidating resources, if we're actually getting rid of servers in favor of cloud-based offerings, we can sometimes show a cost savings. We don't always show a cost savings, meaning there are additional benefits to moving to the cloud that are a little softer or that are harder to quantify, but they can be quantified. And some of those, we'll talk about some of those in just a minute, but let's bring out the cost to value here as well. We have the infrastructure as a service, that's IaaS there, infrastructure as a service. There is a direct correlation between cost and benefit and moving from cloud to in-house, if we're talking about building up a data center. The short summary of what I just said there was, the larger your organization, from an SMB perspective, not from an enterprise perspective, but from an SMB perspective, the larger your organization, the less likely it is you will see an efficiency savings with a cloud solution, because the reason being, you will have offloaded so much to a cloud infrastructure, there is a tipping point at which you will see a benefit to simply hosting your own data center internally. Now, there are additional hassles that go along with that, meaning redundancy, backups, electricity, physical infrastructure, all the stuff that a cloud solution takes care of for you. But there is a relationship, and generally that really only comes into play on the very high end, meaning a very large client, but that is a consideration. So we have traditional methods for accessing your data, protecting your data. Why can't I just continue to stick with those? And you can. I personally don't have a concern if a client wants to remain with say for a traditional, maybe an older style backup where you have file and folder saved daily or hourly to an on-site hard drive that they rotate manually. And backup, I'm using this because that's a frequently expressed concern. And the answer is, yeah, you can still do that, but the advantage for cloud services and the kind of solutions that we're offering allow you to offset your risk, hassle, and maintenance, right? So you have lower administrative overhead by giving someone else the responsibility of maintaining those backups. In addition, those backups, because they are at the scale that they're at with the providers, they're not supporting a single company. They're supporting thousands or tens of thousands of companies on their own backbone. So we have your data being backed up at beyond an enterprise-grade capability, meaning it's extremely secure, reliable, and redundant, which is a little harder to guarantee for SMBs from a traditionally built method. So I spoke previously here about where the cloud may not be right for your organization, because that is a factor where I don't want to push a cloud solution. I want to determine if something is right for you, and then we can act on it if it's appropriate. But this is a investigation of cloud options and not necessarily just to push everything over to the cloud. I spoke before about the quantity. As you add more servers, well, at some point you need to talk about or potentially, right, if you're talking about cost savings, an in-house solution versus a cloud solution. And again, this is at the point where your business would move from SMB to enterprise scale. So may not necessarily, that's just barely outside the scope of this conversation for the client sizes that we're usually discussing here, but I still wanted to bring that up. Some clients have certain performance needs that require them to have hardware on site. So back to the conversation of having critical resources elsewhere versus critical resources on site. Say you're a CAD designer and you're doing 3D modeling. We can push some of that from the cloud, but for other solutions, or for those kind of solutions, depending on your other pieces in play, and depending on your users and how they need to access their data, certain pieces of the infrastructure may need to be retained on site. So that's not to cross cloud off the list as an option, but it means there's an additional consideration before just committing to the cloud. And we can help you walk through that. We can help design the specific solutions needed for that. For that particular example, we have a CAD designer that can't really be expected to upload and download data all day because the files that they use are so huge, and say your internet pipe at your location is not. We can put an interim step or an intermediary piece that helps serve that data to the end users. So meaning you would still have that cloud back-end infrastructure guaranteeing everything that it guarantees, but still giving your users the performance they need, even though you may have other limitations on site or other restrictions. Spoke about backup briefly there, the storage piece, and yeah, there are advantages in terms of the cost, the overhead, and the administration time. But the service model of a cloud solution implies that you are handing the responsibility of your infrastructure to somebody else to maintain and service. So this is a pay for your performance needs and pay for your storage needs type of model. Therefore, if you have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data, then if you are going to offload that and bring that off-site, then there is a cost in order to do that. Then we have the discussion, okay, do you really need this petabyte of data off-site, or do you want to instead purge your data, replicate some of your data, have core data locally backed up with a different solution, and have frequently accessed data off-site, maybe? And this is a consideration, though. The more storage you have, the more careful we need to be about the planning stage. And then finally, the ISP, the connectivity for your office. I spoke before about how critical is your core office. If your office goes down under this new proposed cloud model, if a single office fails, how critical is it that they must be back online? And then we have discussions about ISPs and redundancy and potentially multiple ISPs, automatic failover. When one service fails, it would just cut over to a redundant backup service. If your data is on site, this is not as much of an issue. If your data is hosted in the cloud, it may be an issue. And I say maybe because we also have synchronization services. Those of you who are comfortable with email, we've talked before, or I've talked before with other clients in the past about, well, if email goes down, if your cloud-based email goes down, you'll be okay for a short term because you have a locally synchronized copy of your email database on your machine, right? You can just think of those who use Outlook or pick your favorite mail client. If you're set up correctly, you should have it be configured so that there is a local copy of, say, your inbox on your machine, so that doesn't just disappear if your internet goes down. So again, those back-end systems, those additional complexity pieces are necessary, but it's something that we're familiar with talking about in moving to cloud solutions. So back to the benefit discussion here. We are talking about accessing your data from anywhere. We're not restricting your users to any particular location. We're talking about providing a cost savings. We didn't talk in much detail about that, but we do have pieces, everything from, as I said, the electricity, the heating costs, the physical hosting costs, the backup costs, right? There's a lot of both hard and soft costs listed here that we can itemize and discuss later. But there is a cost savings moving infrastructure from internally maintained to a cloud infrastructure. We can better budget without a capital expenditure in terms of upfront costs because we can push a button and spin up a server. We can push a button and add a bunch of users. We can push a button and add new phone lines and new mailboxes, et cetera. So we don't have a not as much of a spike in terms of a setup of new services, in terms of a cost spike. This is a both lower upfront cost, but also long-term here. It gives you a stable expectation for ongoing services. Scalable, I just spoke about that. We can both add but also remove resources on demand so that for certain situations you are not overcommitting yourself, so that if you're, for example, purchasing a new server and you say, well, I'm going to have 50 employees, and you buy those licenses and then you find out later that actually, you know what, I just wasted a lot of money. For whatever reason, we don't have 50 employees, we now have 35. We can scale down resources and you're only paying for what you use. So there's no buyer's remorse here if we have to change our numbers after the fact. And everything that I said is, yes, you push a button. It's generally, usually that simple in terms of adding services, in terms of increasing, decreasing quantity. The deployment time is extremely fast. So one of my points with this webinar is to hopefully get across the idea that cloud services are complicated. They are probably not rocket science at this point, but there are many considerations that we want to address before we just say to somebody, sure, move your environment to the cloud. It is not, it's something that we are comfortable helping with from a variety of platforms and solution sizes. But my concern is that you not even necessarily move to the cloud, right? We may want to evaluate your needs to determine if a cloud solution is even proper for your environment, and then based on those results, we can take action. I think we are right at about a half hour here. We have time for any Q&A. If anyone has any questions, comments, feel free to type them into the chat tool that should be available here through our webinar tool. Okay, I have the question, could you tell us a little bit about Office 365? And that's I'll try to keep that one simple because we have a little we could talk as much about that as we want. 365 is a probable component of one of the modules that I spoke about before for a solution for your organization. I say probable because it may not necessarily meet all needs, and there may be other better solutions for whatever reason. But 365 is becoming a very commonly accessed component in cloud services. The major pieces that you may have heard about are Exchange or email. 365, one of the modules of 365 is the Exchange Online component, where your email now points to a server online hosted by Microsoft instead of being on site at your environment. Another piece for 365 is the SharePoint Online component, and that is where traditionally you would have a fairly complex, fairly expensive, and high performance SharePoint server on site at your office. Instead, Microsoft now provides this as a part of 365 as a hosted model, right? So there is a cloud-based SharePoint environment that comes with Office 365 that is extremely customizable, extremely powerful, and the part I like is you get that capability for relatively low cost. It was much more difficult in the past. If a customer had an interest in 365, it was more difficult for financial justification. Particularly with SharePoint, it's much easier now with 365. So we have Exchange is one piece. SharePoint is another piece. We have additional modules like Link, which is Microsoft's instant messaging application, which does interact with and is compatible with Skype, for those of you who use Skype. And we often, 365 is a suite of services. There are several modules, like I said. So the commonly used components are the Exchange Online, because we often have users asking to, or excuse me, clients asking to move their email online, or move their email to a cloud-based solution. And 365 is a very easy to justify solution because of the cost and convenience. It's fairly cheap. And then we say, okay, well, you're online now with 365, and a SharePoint solution is a next kind of inevitable conversation, because it's there, it is free, or it's included with 365 for, as I said, a very low cost. And there are additional modules that the SharePoint capability will give you, the additional benefits that the SharePoint capability will give you. I spoke before about getting your file and folders online. Whether or not you have a server in place, SharePoint is one of the options for making that happen. For those of you who have investigated OneDrive for Business, that's Microsoft's solution for file and folder hosting. You can think of that as a fancy Dropbox. And there are other solutions available. That's one of them. That's also on the SharePoint backend. That comes with Office 365. Any other questions? Go ahead and type them in if you have them. Okay, I have another question here about cost, the pricing for this. At this, what we generally do here is we need to have an evaluation of your environment. So, okay, and the question is, how high up does it scale? So we have, I do want to look at your environments in terms of, well, there's a lot of factors at play here. So, meaning I'm not going to just lay out some pricing models here for everything that we could possibly get. But say from an Office 365 perspective, we do have the ability to scale up high if you are an enterprise environment, or up to that SMB comfort zone. You can also scale down to a single user if necessary. And the pricing model is variable depending on the features that you would like from 365. So I spoke before about the Exchange Online piece, that with a fairly basic back end, meaning you would still get everything that you would expect from a Exchange server, including Outlook web access, so you can access your email through a web interface, access through a cell phone, shared calendaring, shared messaging, global address lists, everything that you have from your Exchange server. We can get that depending on your size and a few other aspects about your environment, roughly around $4 per month. That's the low end. And then as you start bundling services into that model, you add a few more capabilities for an additional cost. And we have other aspects where I talked before about SharePoint or Link or the more advanced features, more size scaling features if you're storing more data, etc. And finally, if you wanted to bundle in additional subscriptions, which we didn't really talk about here, subscriptions to other Microsoft services like Microsoft Office, instead of paying $400 or so for a retail license of Microsoft Office Professional 2013, you can now get that available as a subscription cost. The subscription cost for that, again, depends on a few things, but it's something like $20 a month. Tom, is that about right? $20 a month for Microsoft Office Pro Plus is the addition that you would get from a more expensive subscription model, because then you're also prepaying, or you're getting the subscription for Microsoft Office, not just the 2013 version, but whatever version happens to come out next. It's an ongoing subscription, so you don't have to worry about future upgrades, future retail license purchases. Okay, any other questions? All right, I think I am not seeing anything else here on my queues, so I'm going to call this one good. We are certainly available, Tom Hansma, Andy Kaiser, both of us. If there are any additional questions, you can also email cloud@i3bus.com. We have our contact information there as well. Thanks, everybody, for your time. I hope this enlightened you a bit on your cloud options, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.